Hey guys, so you want to learn how to make this amazing animation, but you're a beginner in Cinema 4D? If yes, then my friend, you are at the right place. In this video, I'm going to be teaching you how to make this animation from the modeling part, to the animation part, to the texturing part, and finally to the rendering part. And it's going to be extremely easy. Even if you're a beginner in Cinema 4D, you're going to find it very easy to follow along. And yeah, so what are you waiting for? Just join this class today and take your Cinema 4D animation skills to the next level. Thank you. Alright guys, so we're inside the beautiful world of Cinema 4D, and here we're going to be making this amazing animation. So yeah, first of all, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating that text which we want to write, and we're going to go for that. We're going to go to MoGraph. We're going to click MoGraph. We're going to go down to MoText. Now MoText is basically the way you generate text inside of Cinema 4D, and you can see we have this text. And to modify this text, to modify the actual text inside written inside this 3D model, we can just go select this MoText. And we can go down here, text, and we can just rename it. I'm just gonna turn on caps lock because I want it to be in all caps. And I'm gonna say I'm just gonna write cool because why not? Just a second, I messed up there. I'm gonna write cool because why not? Because this animation is pretty cool, not gonna lie. Yeah, so it's way too thin, and what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna select a thick font. How about Sergio UI black? That seems to be good. And after that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the depth. So the depth, I'm going to set it to be something like, say, 50. Actually, that's way too less. I'm going to set it to be 70. That is enough, and 70 seems to be the sweet spot. And we're going to actually increase the space between these letters. So for that, what we're going to be doing is we're going to select the mode text, and we're going to come down here, and under this horizontal spacing, this is basically the individual the space between the individual characters. So once we increase this, you're going to see that space is going to increase just like that, and that seems to be the sweet spot, and our text is finalized. Okay, so next up, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be actually creating those spheres which we want to have inside our animation. So for that, I'm going to go to the primitives. I'm just going to press and hold, and I'm going to create a sphere. So yeah, if you don't know what primitives are, basically these shapes which Cinema 4D gives you, these are basically the building blocks of your 3D models, and you create most of your models you create from modifying these primitives. So yeah, let's just take this sphere, and we're gonna decrease the size, and we're gonna make it we're gonna select this, and we're gonna go down here, and the radius should be, say, 5 centimeters. That's way too small. I'm gonna set it to be, say, 8 centimeters. That seems to be good, and I'm gonna bring it forward just because, and I'm gonna duplicate this. So we're gonna basically have 3 spheres, all of different sizes. So this one is going to be instead of 8, we're gonna have 13 centimeters, and this one is going to be, actually 13 centimeters is a bit too much. How about 12 centimeters? That seems to be sweet spot. And for this, we're gonna have 15. How about 15? Yeah, that seems to be good. Okay, so next up, what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be adding the cloner. Okay, the cloner. What is the cloner? The Cinema 4D cloner is basically the way you you duplicate things and you add more of a certain like element. And in this case, we have these spheres which if we put inside the cloner, so Cinema 4D is gonna generate like thousands of these. So that we can have a lot of these, right? So for that, right now you can see that we have these spheres inside our object viewer. And so now we go inside what do you call it, this MoGraph, and under the MoGraph we come down to the cloner. Now we select the cloner, and we have this cloner right here. Okay, now for objects to be duplicated by the cloner, what we need to do is we need to make them a child of the cloner, right? So I'm pretty sure you guys already know that. So we're gonna select select all these, and by the way, to select multiple elements, just select the first one, press shift, and then select the last one. So it's gonna select all of them, right? So we're gonna drag this inside the cloner, right? So now it's a child of the cloner. Okay, so for the settings of the cloner, what we're going to be doing is we're going to click this cloner, and we're going to come down here and inside the mode. Now this is the mode. If we right now it's set to linear. Now linear, all these are going to be in one straight linear line, and say I set it to radial, it's going to be this a circular shape, right? And if I set it to grid array, it's going to be in a grid. Okay, and if I set it to honeycomb array, it's going to be in this shape. Okay, so basically these modes are like how you want the objects to be duplicated, right? But for this, since we have this one object which we need to fill with these balls and these cloner elements, so we're gonna select, in the mode we're gonna select object, right? And in this object mode you have to pass in an object which you want to be filled, or to be to have these objects, right? These spheres. So for this, we're gonna drag this mode text and we're gonna put it inside, right? So actually, one second, just give me a sec. Yeah, that was a problem, because what we need to do is, before we actually drag this in, we can't directly drag this in, right? We have to convert this into a mesh. Okay, and how do we do that? We basically just click this button right here, which makes it editable, because right now this is a 3D this is a Cinema 4D mode text, right? It's not an actual mesh. It's not a 3D model. Basically we have to convert it into a 3D model. Okay, so we're just gonna, actually, before I do that, I'm just gonna select the cloner and I'm gonna remove this object. So I'm just gonna clear this so that we are not having this as our object anymore. So I'm just gonna select this mode text. After that, I'm going to come here, make it editable. Okay, now the problem with this is that it creates a group, and inside this group we have all these individual elements, right? Individual letters. So but we want all of the whole word to be one single mesh. So I'm just going to select all of them, right? So all of them are selected, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to select this connect objects plus delete. Now the reason why we're doing connect objects plus delete instead of just connect objects is that if we do connect objects, it's going to create another mesh. Like, it's going to keep this one and it's going to create another one, which is going to be a single mesh. But we don't want two meshes, right? We just want one. And so that's why we're going to do connect objects plus delete. And now you can see this whole mode text is one single mesh. So I can just move it as one single mesh. So now what we can do is we can easily put this as your cloner objects, right? So just select the cloner down in the object, you can just drag this and put it inside. Now as you can see, it is kind of weird. Like, what just happened? You must be wondering what just happened. And yes, I know it's kind of weird, but we're going to be fixing that in just a bit. So first of all, we're going to select mode text and we're going to press this button twice and this button twice. Now what this does is that it makes it hidden from your camera, right? So now it's not going to be visible in our viewport, and it's not going to be visible in our render view as well. Okay, so you can see it's not visible, only our spheres are visible, right? So right now the size is very high and the amount is very low, right? So we're going to select the cloner, and here in the distribution, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be clicking this, and then we're going to be selecting surface. Now what surface does is that only on the surface of the letters our elements, our cloner elements, or our spheres, and are going to be visible. And right now if we come down, you can see our count is only on 20. Now we're going to increase that to say 500. You can see you can start to see a pattern forming, and you can start to see that it's forming the letters cool. And if you increase the count even more, say to 1000, you can see it looks pretty similar. Alright, so right now the problem is that our individual element size, or individual sphere size, that is pretty large. Okay, so for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these spheres, and instead of 8, let's do 5. Okay, so you can see some of them are smaller now, and instead of 12 we can do say 9. That's better. Instead of 15 we can do say 10. How about 10? Yeah, that seems to be good. Okay, so now we can increase this increase the amount, because the count, because they're pretty less. So just a second, 2000. Yeah, that seems to be perfect. Now I can increase the size a little bit more, but the problem with that would be that it's going to be very heavy on your computer, and it's going to take a really long time to render. So I'm not going to be increasing it anymore, and we are done with our 3D model. So next up we are going to animate it. Okay, so now is the time for the textures, right, and the actual materials. So for that I'm going to fire up Octane. If you don't have Octane, just use the physical render or the standard renderer. So yeah, I'm just going to fire up Octane. Let me just give it a second to load up. Okay, so my Octane is fired up. I'm just going to dock it right here, and I'm going to increase the size. Just give me a second. Okay, so we're done. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to first of all render this. Let's see if it's rendering. Okay, so cool. And while it's doing that, while it's rendering, I'm going to go to objects. I'm going to select HDRI environment. So we're going to be actually adding an HDRI to light this whole scene, and we're going to add a glossy material to the balls. So now in order to actually get those reflections, we need an HDRI. So once this tag is selected, I'm going to go down. Just a second, I'm going to go down and I'm going to click this black texture because right now we haven't loaded anything up. And I'm going to click these three dots right here to select our texture, or actually HDRI. I'm just going to select a random HDRI which I have lying around. If you want to select an HDRI, just go to Google and search HDRI Haven. This HDRI Haven website. This is basically by far the best website for HDRIs. Just go to these HDRIs, and the fun fact is that these are completely free, and all of these are completely free to download, and you can just download them and import them to your Cinema 4D, and you can just use them for your lighting. So once our Octane Sky or once our HDRI is imported, I'm going to hit render again because sometimes it doesn't like load up properly. So I'm going to hit render again. I'm just going to wait for it to render. And look how cool that looks already. Alright, so now we have our HDRI set up and our lighting is basically set up, and we're gonna create an actual what do you call it, a background. Okay, so for that I'm gonna select, press and hold this. I'm going to select a plane, and this plane is going to be something like that. Yeah, that seems to be good. And we're gonna increase the size. And next up, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding a bend deformer to this plane. Now the reason I'm doing that is because I want to create that very famous look, which is basically called your infinite background look. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be smoothly bending this whole what do you call it, your plane. So it's going to look as if the background, it just goes on for infinity. Okay, so for that we're going to be just decreasing the size of this. And we're going to go into the deformers. I'm going to press and hold this, and we're going to be selecting the bend deformer. Now for deformers to work on an object, what we need to do is we need to make the deformer a child of that object, right? So that's a very basic thing, you should already know that, but if you don't know, I'm just telling you. Okay, so we're going to select this bend deformer and we're going to drag it over this plane, so we're going to make it a child of that plane, right? So next up we're going to be selecting the bend, and right now let's actually try to increase the strength. So you can see it's very weird, and it's very bending very weirdly. So I'm just going to leave it right here, and we're going to go back to the plane. The reason why it's not actually bending is because it only has very less segments. Okay, so I'm just going to increase the segments, something like say 100 should work, and height segments 100. Okay, so right now the reason why it's not working is because we have it in the wrong direction, and so we're gonna rotate it like that. Something like that should probably work. And just give me a second. Actually, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select this bend, and I'm gonna select fit to parent. Now what this is gonna do is that it's gonna make the bend deformer the exact size of the actual plane. So I'm gonna rotate it like this. Then I'm going to rotate it just a second, not like that. Yes, I'm going to rotate it like this. So next up I'm going to do fit to parent once again, and now you can see it is basically done, and we are going to increase the strength, so something like that. And next up we can select the plane, and we can increase the size. Okay, so you can see this is our infinity background, and it's ready. So we're going to increase the width, and now what I can do is I can just select this plane and I can move it around so that it's placed correctly. I'm going to rotate it by 90 degrees. And I'm going to move it right here. I'm going to move it back. And for these balls to actually touch this plane as well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select right click the plane, and I'm going to go to simulation tags and collider body. I'm going to make this a collider body as well, and in the shape I'm going to select static mesh as well, and we're going to go down and we're going to do the same thing. The bounce is going to be to 0 and the friction is going to be 100%. Alright, we're good to go. Now let's just play the animation once again. You can see it's actually some of them are touching this ground too. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move it a little down so that there's a little difference between the actual text and the ones which are falling down. So yeah, it looks pretty good. Let's actually see how it looks in our Octane renderer. And so one thing I forgot to mention, just save your projects, guys, because I really don't want you to lose your projects, because Octane is not that reliable of a render engine. It can crash at any time. And I'm just gonna name it I don't know, balls, I guess. And I'm gonna render it again because it seemed to be stuck. And now you can see it looks pretty good. Okay, so what I'm gonna do next is I'm going to position my camera accordingly so that it doesn't so that the background is not visible, and I'm going to play the animation so that actually one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move this even more down, because many of the what do you call them, the balls are actually visible in the camera. I want only a few to be visible. I'm going to move this plane a little, something like that should do. I'm going to play the animation from start, and now you can see it looks pretty good. And one thing I want you to notice is just see how good the background looks. It's really giving that infinity look which we wanted, and I think it looks pretty good. So yeah, I'm just gonna stop right there, and I'm just gonna save once again. So next up we're gonna be working on the materials, and for the materials what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to create shader C4D Octane. Just a second, just let me do that again. Shader C4D Octane and Octane material. So that's how you create an Octane material, and I hope you already know that. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be picking this material. Before editing it, we're going to be applying to one of the spheres, right? So for the diffuse, I'm going to go for a light pink color, so something like that should do. Let's see it in the render view. Let's render it again. Actually, let's just continue working on our material. Okay, so instead of diffuse, I'm going to select glossy, and it's taking a little while. You can see it is pretty shiny right now, so I'm going to add some roughness, and I don't want it to be too rough, so I'm going to go to index, and I'm going to increase the index a little bit so that it looks more kind of like a metallic color, but a plastic color as well. So I'm going to increase the roughness a little bit more, and as you can see, it looks pretty good already, I guess. And I'm going to increase the intensity of the color. So that's it for one of my textures, materials actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to Control C and Control V. I'm going to paste it, and the second one I'm going to apply it to the other sphere, and this one I'm going to change the color to say something like green. How about green? Let me just see how green looks. And okay, so why are we not seeing the green? Just give me a second. I'm going to render it again. So as you can see, the green looks pretty good as well. And next up, I'm going to duplicate this once again, and this one I'm going to apply it to the last sphere, and this I'm going to keep, say, blue. I'm going to set the color of that to blue. And next up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually duplicate it once again, and this I'm going to apply to the background, and the background should be somewhat of a, how about that? No, it doesn't look good. How about a purple, a pinkish purple? Nope, that's not good either. How about a red? I think that looks pretty decent. How about a yellow though? Yellow looks pretty good as well. Yeah, actually I'm gonna go with yellow. It doesn't really matter, but yeah, so that's pretty much it, and I'm just gonna render it now. So the way we render things with Octane is that first of all we go to Octane, settings, and here what we're gonna do is we're gonna set the max samples to something like, say, 400. Okay, and after that we're just gonna cross it out, and we're gonna go to the render settings of our Cinema 4D by clicking this button. And after that we're gonna go to this render and we're gonna select Octane Render, and these settings should be the default. I'm not going to change them, but you can go ahead and mess with them if you want. So next up, when you're ready, we can just actually one more thing, just go to these render settings and go to output and the frame. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do from frame number 0 to frame number 180, right? Yeah, because we have 0 to 180. Okay, so it's going to make it an animation, and next up we are going to just hit render, and there you go. So it's going to start rendering. So yeah, that's pretty much it for today, guys. Please leave a review down below and tell me if you like this class or not, and apart from that, just follow me on Skillshare so you get notified whenever I upload a class. And yeah, that's pretty much it for today, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye. Now to animate it, first of all what we're going to be doing is we're going to be increasing the length of our timeline, because right now our timeline is only 90 frames, which is like 3 seconds, and let's actually set it to, say, 180 frames, because we want it to be at least like 6 seconds or so. So 180 frames is good. Let's just play it, and you can see nothing is really happening right now. So we're gonna for that, what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna go to 0 frame, the first frame, and we're going to go to the cloner, and we're going to come down and the count. Now this button right here, this is basically your keyframe. Now I'm not going to go in like much detail about keyframes, because that's a very deep topic, and there are whole courses dedicated to Cinema 4D keyframes. And basically the basic idea you need to get about keyframes is that you can change an object over time, right? So if I go to the first and I set it to say 0, right now you don't have anything. So, and if I press this, I'm just going to keep recording it, right? So if I go to, say, frame 170 and increase the count back to 2000, okay, and now if I press this button, it's going to record that. Okay, so now you can see if I play from the beginning, you can see we have these balls or spheres appearing as time goes on, right? So that looks pretty good. But right now it's very static and nothing is really moving. Okay, the balls are just appearing where they are actually located. So we're gonna add some movement now. So now to add some movements, what we're gonna be doing is that first of all I'm gonna be showing you the steps, and then I'm gonna explain what we are actually doing. Okay, so I'm gonna right click the cloner, we're gonna go down to simulation tags, and we're gonna add a rigid body. Now what this is doing is that it is making your cloner rigid. Okay, but cloner, we don't have anything in the cloner itself. We have it in we have our spheres in as the children of the cloner. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going to collision, and we're going to, inside this inherit tag, we're going to be adding apply tag to children. Okay, and individual elements. Now which elements do you want to select? We're going to be selecting all of them, right? So I'm going to do all. Okay, so this is selecting all the elements inside our cloner, and it's going to applying this rigid body tag to all of them. And next up what we're going to be doing is we're going to be controlling the movement of your spheres. So here we have the controls, and bounce I'm going to set it to 0%, because we don't want these to bounce again and again. Once they reach the bottom, they should just pile up. And the friction we have to set it to 100%, otherwise they're going to be just sliding and moving around. Okay, so friction, let's set it to 100%. And now if I play this, you can see 1 second, just give me a sec. You can see that these are falling like crazy, and they're not following our patterns. Okay, so right now we've basically messed up everything, and we're going to be fixing it in just a second. And now it's time for the magic part. Basically, if you look at it right now, what's happening is that the balls are falling down, but they're not being stopped by anything, right? So we're going to be making this mo text, the actual text, as kind of like a collision point, actually a surface where the balls should just collide and they should stay right there, right where they are. Okay, so we're going to be making this mode text. We're going to be right clicking it, and in the simulation tag we're going to be selecting the collider tag. Just a second, the collider body. Okay, so in the collision we're going to be, first of all, we're going to be matching all the settings. So bounce should be 0 and friction should be 100%. And also inside this shape we're going to be selecting the static mesh, because we have this mesh, or this the 3D model of the text, and we wanted to abide by that 3D model. Okay, now if I play this, you can see this amazing thing happening, in which when they're actually touching the cool text, they're actually staying there instead of just bouncing around. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the animation, and we're basically done with the animation. So next up is the texturing.